Welcome again. Thank you for joining. We've got a great content for today, covering basically the basics of getting into Microsoft Copilot. How do we secure it? How do we lock it down? Our presenters today will be Naeem. He will be covering the security portion. Jesse will be covering our ACM component, and then we'll have a last little session on how to basically take the next step in Copilot and utilizing agents, etc. And myself, I am a client partner with Valorem Reply, covering the Telco Media and Gaming OU. So if there's any outreach after the meeting that you need, please contact me and I can help facilitate any conversations that you need post the meeting. As I mentioned, the agenda for today, we're going to go over the role of AI, information security protection, how do we adopt Copilot inside of our organization successfully, and then extending that Copilot. Once you do have it integrated, how do we start building the horsepower around Copilot and its abilities to automate and basically make our lives easier with the utilization of agents. And then we'll close out and have some Q&A after. Just a reminder, any questions you can ask in the Q&A and we will respond to those as we go through the presentation. So no need to wait till the end. You can add those. If there is, we love having engagement in these meetings. So if you like something, please react to it. It's a fun way to keep engaged in these virtual meetings. And then lastly, just remind, thank you, Jesse. Just a reminder that these meetings are recorded. Okay, so who is Valorem Reply? On the call, you have both legs of Valorem. Myself, I cover the cloud and AI platform. So with Azure SI, what does that mean? We cover app innovation, infrastructure, any data and AI, and security. Our other leg is Valorem Reply Modern Work, who covers the AI business solutions. So any low code, no code, business applications, anything in modern work, Copilot adoption, they cover. And so you can see here on the right is between the two companies, there isn't a Microsoft product that we can't cover or integrate with, which makes it really great for when we do an initiative like adopting Copilot. It enables us to reach beyond just the, hey, I'm typing in a chat and utilizing this. How do we connect this to Power Apps and databases and apps that are inside of your business? Some of our work inside of Telco Media and Gaming include Lumen, Disney, Ubisoft, Lionsgate. Just a call out on the side, a lot of the content that we're going to show, these companies that adopt this see a huge adoption rate. As you can see inside of Lumen Technologies there, 8,000 employees with a 93% adoption rate. That is critical if you're going to be getting into this Copilot era, to where if you can deploy it, you can pay for the licensing, but if you don't have people wanting to use it, understanding how to use it properly, it's going to fall on its face. So Jesse will go through that adoption change management that gets us to that 93% adoption rate. And then also Lionsgate, as you can see there, is we did a great initiative with them on the thing that most people are concerned with Copilot and the implementation of those is the security. How do I make sure that someone isn't going to type a prompt in the chat that then ends up getting into documents they shouldn't be able to? How do we use sensitivity labels? Naeem's going to go deeper into this on how we do this inside of Copilot. So what's the role of AI in telco, media, and gaming? First, just a brief overview. I know I was confused when this first rolled out many years ago. Is like, okay, everything's a Copilot, but what do I actually get? So this slide is just kind of outlining when we say Copilot chat versus M365 Copilot versus Copilot for sales and service, what are the offerings that you actually get? Because we get a lot of clients that go in, hey, I'm trying to write a prompt to access documents and email and everything inside my subscription, but it's not replying back, right? And you're like, well, you have Copilot chat versus the M365 Copilot and the paid license on work. So this is a great slide just to overview, just to make sure that we are set on a common understanding, and where we will be talking today is inside of the M365 Copilot capabilities. So when adopting M365 Copilot, there are a couple low-hanging fruits that are immediately fixed. And 3 of those that we've identified with Microsoft is fixing the broken meeting, right? So how do I, when you're in a meeting, your head's down taking meeting notes and you miss things. And so M365 Copilot inside of Teams and utilizing the meeting recording transcription. Also, how do I get engaged and expand on creative ideas that are in a meeting? You can use Copilot inside of there to effectively try and research and understand ideas that you're working through in those meetings. Also, the information labyrinth. Where is my data? Where are the files? I know I use this personally on a daily basis of, hey, Copilot, I had a meeting that talked about this. Can you go find me this PowerPoint or this PDF or this presentation? Having to sift through SharePoint and all the mini data storage locations takes lots of time. As you can see there, 8.8 hours of trying to sift through email. That's crazy. That's a lot of money, where a lot of that can be reinvested into the licensing and the growing of Copilot and et cetera. And finally, just the blank page. How do I expand ideas? I've got really great ideas locked in my head. How do I get them out into something that is consumable by my company? That is, I can tell you, it's almost like a journaling session with Copilot now. When I have an idea, how do I expand it out that gets it in a state that's ready to be presented? So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off to Naeem, who's going to go through the security aspect and how do we manage data and make sure that it doesn't get lost or people don't have access. So Naeem.
Let me come off mute there. Alrighty, well, thank you very much, Andrew. Let's go ahead by just introducing 3 fundamental concepts. We're going to start off today's conversation going over data oversharing. Then we're going to proceed over to data loss or insider risk. And lastly, we're going to go over data non-compliance. And of course, as you can see on the screen here, each of these can come with consequences if they're not done right. So we're going to go over what exactly these security risks are and how exactly do we go about addressing them, what causes them, and then how can we remediate the issue. Let's start off with oversharing risk. So what exactly is oversharing? Well, it's important to remember that Copilot only accesses files or only accesses data that an individual user is authorized to access. And oversharing happens when an employee or a member of the organization, contractor, whoever it may be, has access to information beyond what is necessary to do their job and to do their function within the organization. And what can cause oversharing? Well, it can creep up on us sometimes. We have a bit of creep that can happen with it. You can accidentally saving a file to a location that by default has very broad access permissions. A user sharing content with someone who should not have access to that content, or a file that just doesn't have access permissions on it by default. It's not protected or restricted to a certain user group. That can be the root cause of oversharing issues. In this example here, when we talk about gaining visibility into overshare content, we want to take some factors into consideration as to how quickly we should go about remediating that issue. So things to look out for include sites and files that may have sensitive data. Data has just been shared very broadly within the organization. So files that a lot of people have access to, and files that we see when we go to look at logs and we go to audit, we see, oh, a lot of people have been here. A lot of people are using this file. That's something that maybe we should take a look at. So in this example at the bottom here, where we see a site contains documents with credit card numbers, everyone in the organization can access that site's content. And then we see, over 500 people access that content in the last week or so. Like, oh my goodness, this is, very high risk content. It's very sensitive information. A lot of people are accessing it. So this is very high risk. We should really prioritize remediating this issue. And then a couple of other notes we want to go over. When it comes to fixing some existing oversharing risks, we want to specifically restrict user and Copilot access to risky sites while remediating those identified oversharing risks. We want to act on policy suggestions. So we may have policy and governance elsewhere that can mitigate oversharing. We want to make sure that we update those things, and we want to ensure that that Copilot is in lockstep with those policies. We want to prevent Copilot from accessing or processing certain sensitive files and from using them in responses if required. And we'll go over how to do that soon. And again, we want to remove organization-wide access as needed. So that really broad site access, that can be a really big source of trouble. So we want to ensure that we don't use that when it's not necessary. Additionally, when it comes to monitoring for new oversharing risks, it's important to receive alerts when new oversharing occurs, and we want to ensure that we set that infrastructure up properly so that we are constantly in the know as to what's going on. We want to further secure sensitive data through file level access control. So we want to ensure that that files are protected by default, that only certain people should have access to certain files, and that's baked into the file itself. And use data loss prevention, so DLP policies, to also promote that governance. And then we want to improve Copilot responses by archiving or deleting unneeded content. And that's extremely important too for cleaning up that Microsoft Graph content that Copilot can pull from. It's just old, stale data that's very sensitive. We don't want that in there if we don't need it. Okay, let's move on to insider risk. So insider risk. What is data loss and insider risk? Well, data loss and insider risk may occur without Copilot use. They can just occur normally through just normal action without the use of a generative AI tool. The productivity benefits of Copilot, however, creates opportunities for these risks to happen with far less effort. Data loss is when unsafe or inappropriate sharing or transfer of sensitive transfer of sensitive content and sensitive information occurs. An insider risk often involves users misusing their authorized access to cause harm within the organization. And this misuse may be intentional or may be unintentional. And what can cause data loss and insider risk? Well, Copilot creates documents that aren't protected by default because the inputs maybe weren't protected. So Copilot can protect an unprotected document, and that leads us to our previous issue before the oversharing. Copilot may have access to summarize sensitive data, access that user probably should not have, and thus may summarize that sensitive information. And a user's credentials could be compromised, for example, and the bad actor may use Copilot to then pull that sensitive data out. An employee that may have resigned, for example, we often have this with the risk of leaving the organization. An employee that may have resigned may want to try and keep company IP, and they may try to use Copilot to quickly find things that are useful and throw them all on the jump drive. So when it comes to getting reports of risky behavior in AI use, it's important to keep a note of a few different things. You can view reports of sensitive data and unprotected files referenced in Copilot interactions. It's important to keep an eye on those. You can get alerted to risky AI use, such as an attempted prompt injection attack, and you can view prompt and response text and reference files for everyone that uses Copilot. So it's important that you keep an eye on those things. If something looks out of place, it's important that we go forward and we investigate that. And here's an example scenario of where we use labels to label sensitive information. So labels can be very important for preventing access to sensitive files that certain users should not have access to, and thus Copilot shouldn't have access to. So we can detect when content becomes sensitive by using a label that's maybe meant to pick up on a certain sensitive information type. In the first box, or sorry, the second box in the middle here, we see that someone requests that Copilot summarizes this merger document. And Copilot by default summarizes it for them because it's not protected. The label has not been applied to that document. However, in the third box, when we see the example where the label is applied automatically to that box, we then see, oh, someone says, oh, Copilot, please summarize the merger document, but Copilot gives them the hand. Copilot says, no, you can't see that. That's not for you. And that's what we want. We want to prevent unauthorized access via Copilot to these files. And lastly, it's important to also dynamically apply security policies based on risky actions you notice within your environment. So if a user performs a series of risky actions, there's a pattern of very irregular behavior, they're accessing a lot of files they shouldn't be accessing, or they're accessing a lot of files at once, we can then, of course, identify a sequence of these actions. And from there, we can even automatically apply this user on a sort of pseudo no-fly list, just so we can kind of keep an eye on, at least stop the train right then and there and just say, oh, hold up, we might need to take another look at this and kind of analyze your access and see what's going on here. Why are you doing these things? Yeah. Our last point here that I want to cover is regarding AI governance. So what is Copilot governance specifically? Well, Copilot governance supports your Copilot use in adherence to your organization's already existing policies and regulatory requirements. Governance is enforced by a set of compliance and management controls for the safe and effective use of Copilot. And it includes the option to include Copilot interactions and existing compliance management and legal processes alongside other types of Microsoft 365 content. So why do you need Copilot governance? Well, you can configure Copilot governance admin controls to support compliance with a specific AI framework. They'll allow those are built into some of our tools, specifically in Purview, like the EU AI Act, NIST AI risk framework, management framework, and so on and so forth. You can limit exposure from Copilot misuse by identifying issues early and mitigating them quickly. That's what we like. You can identify Copilot response quality by limiting its access to outdated information. Again, getting rid of that old content that we don't want Copilot to pull from. And then keep or delete Copilot generated content according to your risk management policies. And just a few more notes here. When it comes to Copilot interactions, you have a lot that you can do in terms of auditing and keeping an eye on things going on with Copilot. So audit Copilot interactions, such as, again, when did this happen? What user was it with? What event took place? What did they access? Keep an eye on those logs. Additionally, we want to enforce retention and deletion policies for Copilot interactions. If that sensitive information does not need to exist for any longer than a few months or a certain set of days, well, then we need to get rid of it, right? And we can, of course, include a user's Copilot prompts and responses in a legal hold. And lastly here, it's important again to set up alerts so that you receive an alert if a possible compliance or ethical violation occurs. And right then and there, you can start your investigation. You can perform an admin search for litigation or an investigation and include Copilot generate content. And you can assess again and track your adherence with regulatory frameworks, specifically using Compliance Manager and Purview. So it's important that you keep those up to date in terms of what your organization wants to align with. And without further ado, I'll then pass it along to my colleague here, Jesse, for adoption change management. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for just that overview and really laying the foundation for the key pillars of what it takes to secure a more technical and safe environment when we think about launching something like M365 Copilot. So really what I'm here to talk about today is, once we feel comfortable in having that safe and secure foundation, we're ready we're secure, our governance is all in check. For generative AI, we also want to be thinking about how we bring Copilot into the hands of our employees. So how do we get people feeling comfortable with it and really empower them to start to integrate it into their regular day-to-day workflows? How can we really get them used to it so they can see the value? So as I go through my slides here, just going to be talking for maybe 15 minutes or so about what that looks like. Oops, and I actually need to take control here. Okay, sorry, can you guys see the next slide?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, appreciate that overview. What we are really here to talk about through the lens of adoption change management is really the idea of where people, processes, and technology intersect. So when we think about we're safe and secure, we want to implement this new tool, everything is turned on, it has that technical foundation. We want to understand how it works, but really how are the people going to start to use it to really get folks up to speed and start to have them understand, okay, what's in it for me? How does this impact my ways of working? And what does this mean for me in my role? The adoption change management lens really focuses on the people side of change. And while technical readiness is super important, it's important to recognize that in order for organizations to change at a large scale, it all starts at the individual level. So we need to focus a lot of efforts on changing the individual mindsets and changing specific behaviors, because those small changes are what's going to trickle up to a larger organizational change. So we want to make sure that we're understanding our people and their processes. So how do I work, and what does my current work experience look like today? What does my current state look like? What are the tools I use, and what are some of the pain points? What are some of the ways where I can kind of kickstart my efficiency and just see a boost in productivity? And then understanding that future state. So what is the potential of this tool that we're using, like Copilot, and how can it fill some of the gaps that I'm seeing in my current state today? So that's kind of the analysis that we want to do when we're thinking about people, processes, and technology. How can I take the current state and map that to the future state? And what makes Copilot and generative AI different from a change lens? Well, first and foremost, it is a new technology. By default, that's going to make people a little bit more anxious. And you're going to see a couple of different perspectives, right? You're going to have those folks that are really in tune with technology. They're super interested. So, of course, there are going to be some folks that are interested and really ready to hit the ground running. But, at the same time, there are going to be folks that are more reserved and a little bit more unsure about adopting this new technology. So it's about understanding those different levels of perception and how we're going to support all of the people on this journey, no matter where, no matter what their feelings are. It is an individual user experience. So beyond their perception, Copilot is a very use case specific tool. So, it has key features and functionalities, a lot of common use cases, but really it's up to the individuals to find out how it really works for them. And everyone works differently, right? So the value can look different for different teams or departments, different teams or departments. So we want to make sure that we're meeting people where they are. Again, there are lots of use cases that are transferable across teams and departments and verticals, but really we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and understanding this at the individual level so we can set them up for success. As a lot of us have probably seen by now already, Copilot is such a fast-changing tool. Microsoft is constantly releasing updates and new features, making improvements, which is great for the user experience, but it just means that there's, we want to have that regular cadence of making sure that folks are aware of the latest and greatest. They're aware of what's changing or what feedback Microsoft has really taken to improve the tool. So we just want to make sure that there is that continuous channel of updates and support so we can make sure that everyone knows what's going on and how they can continue to work with it to the best of their ability. And of course, there's that piece of technical abstraction. So again, not everyone is used to working with a tool like generative AI. It's very different from some of our other tools like, Teams or Word, where we have a better idea of what's going on in the background. A lot of, the concept of AI is still relatively broad or unknown to a lot of folks. So naturally, that's just going to cause, again, a little bit more resistance, a little bit more hesitation. So it's about navigating those perspectives and that level of comfort as well, in tandem with the ability to use the tool, like what it takes to prompt and identify use cases that are valuable to you. And of course, productivity proof dilemma. We want to make sure that, the people that are leading this change, spearheading change at large organizations, they want to really see the value. What is the return on investment? I think we all know that Copilot is, it's not free and it is not cheap. So we want to make sure that we're seeing that return on investment. What are the productivity gains that we are seeing? What is some of the things like the time savings look like? So really paying attention to not only adoption, but how that translates to other qualitative and quantitative measurement pieces. All right. And so with those unique challenges that Copilot presents, organizations are faced with these key focus areas when it comes to strategizing an adoption change management plan and ultimately executing on that adoption strategy. So a couple of key things that we want to keep in mind. Everything starts with messaging, right? So how are we going to position the announcement of Copilot at an organization? We want to, start to drive awareness and buzz and excitement around this new launch. So we want to make sure that we kick it off with a positive tone, let people know why they should be excited about this. And not only why they should be excited, but again, what's in it for me? That personal level is really what's going to be what resonates with people. So we want to make sure that we're personalizing those messages where it makes sense to make sure that people can really see the value when it comes to their ways of working. So it all comes down to the messaging. What do we want to, focus on in our campaign there? For user adoption, how are we going to prepare our employees to effectively use M365 Copilot? So now we've announced what's coming, we have some buzz around it, everyone's excited, but how are we going to empower them to take advantage of this and really hit the ground running? What does that learning and training and support journey look like? And for this, of course, we want to be mindful of our audience. Do we have a global audience? Do we need to make sure we're offering different time zones or trainings in different time zones to make sure we're reaching people where they are? In addition to that, not only offering things at different times, but catering to different learning styles as well. So what really resonates best with your users? How do they like to learn? And we can lean on this information from some initiatives that have been rolled out in the past, right? The videos work really well with people. Do they like to have handheld materials for people who like to read through things or some maybe self-paced learning? So we just want to be mindful of the different ways people like to learn and making sure that there is something for everyone. With sustaining innovation, how do we continue to discover, innovate, and build with M365 Copilot? So we want to make sure that we are thinking about reinforcing our efforts. So rather than just launching things and doing an initial round of training and adoption support, we really want to make sure that we keep beating that drum. We're sharing, new use cases as they're being discovered. We're sharing new updates as Copilot releases, things that we see on the Copilot roadmap. What are things changing? How can we shift the narrative? What are new ways that we can think about using Copilot in our regular ways of working? We want to make sure that we have a central location, a center of excellence, or a community where we can continue to knowledge share and upskill folks as everyone progresses along this Copilot adoption journey. And last but certainly not least, how do we measure ROI? How do we quantify the value that Copilot brings to the organization? So these are some things that we'll want to make sure are baked into our strategy as well. Of course, we can lean on some things like the Copilot dashboard, where we can get some key insights into active versus enabled users, where people are spending a lot of their time, where do they use Copilot the most across applications, but using other strategies to, again, collect some data that fills the gaps of those of the Copilot dashboard. So things like surveys, asking for some self-reported time savings, how many times a day do they find themselves using Copilot, and what's the overall perception? Also getting feedback on, their learning journey. What do you wish you knew more of? What do you, what are some gaps in learning and adoption that you saw? So we can kind of build on that and improve when we think about a wave 2 and expansion. So these are all things that we want to make sure that we consider when we are building out our adoption change management plan and strategy. And at Valorem Reply, our approach to adoption change management is really rooted in that famous ProSci change methodology, and is a quantitative and qualitative approach to people and change, and really recognizing that change doesn't happen as soon as we assign the Copilot licenses, right? It truly is a journey, and we want to make sure that everyone is supported from start to finish. And so we can address Copilot adoption change management, or ACM, with 3 key pillars. The first being campaigns and training. So again, really having some intent and thought behind what the key messages are, managing that message and setting expectations of the tool, creating that training plan and learning cadence that's really going to set everyone up for success. And again, when we are thinking about training, we want to make sure that we're catering to not only different regions or locations, but different learning styles as well. Also having a space for continued learning and knowledge sharing. I mentioned something like, a center of excellence, or a community in Viva Engage, or maybe a team in Microsoft Teams. Just a forum where people can, build that community of knowledge sharing and learning from one another. When we think about building a champions network, we don't want to underestimate the influence that other people can have across the organization to share a passion for technology, or even just take some of the weight off of your shoulders as a project lead to help cascade important messages. So we really want to build up a strong champions network that can help spread the word and drive some of these key messages and initiatives forward. So when we are building a champions network, we want to make sure, one of the key things is we want to make sure we have representation across different departments, right? So it's not just about driving key messages from, a business goals and perspective level, but we want someone who can speak to different use cases across different teams and departments, and can really speak to how Copilot has helped them. That will help influence folks at different levels and help drive adoption across teams and departments. It fosters that community for knowledge sharing and feedback as well. And it boosts the benefits of being a champion. We want to think about how we can incentivize champions, the level of influence that they have, and so on and so forth. And for measuring ongoing success. By planning our goals and metrics, we're more likely to hit them and more likely to understand how we can continue to hit them over time. So before we kick off any campaign, what we like to do is have a dedicated and a thorough discovery phase, where we not only think about our approach, our audience, and what level of training and communication makes sense for them, but it gives us an opportunity to actually define success. What does success look like? What are some of the key metrics that we want to hit? And what does that look like as we go to scale? So make sure that that's a part of discovery, so we can track how the campaign is doing and how we're meeting those numbers as the adoption journey progresses. Right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into that first pillar, creating an engagement campaign and a training program that sets users up for success. The first aspect of this is managing the message. I've talked about it a little bit earlier, but we know there are lots of anxieties or myths that float around with the idea of using AI, especially when we think about global organizations and large organizations that have different generations represented across their organization, right? Folks have different levels of, experience with AI, and again, that different perception with AI. So we want to make sure that we are starting with the right messages to get everyone on board. These are just some examples of how we can bring those key messages to life, whether that's email banners, infographics. What we like to do is have a unified campaign that can be consistent from intro communications to training and reinforcement activities. On the other side of the communication coin, training goes hand in hand with that. We talked a little bit about different ways that we can reach different audiences with trainings, and we just have a couple of screen captures as to what those deliverables could look like. So again, the key takeaway here is that we want to just keep beating that drum, keep our foot on the gas, and sharing different learning opportunities and training opportunities as we go along. And that can look like a couple of different things. Learning at a broader sense, whether that's Copilot across different tools or applications, or getting it more specific to different persona-based or role-based training opportunities. And for building your champions network. Again, just want to make sure that we have a group of connected, influential, and representative change champions within the organization, folks that are interested in the technology, maybe have some time that they can dedicate to being upskilled, and folks, people that folks feel comfortable going to for questions and providing feedback. When we think about what it takes to build that change champions network, or the level of involvement that champions may need, this can change depending on how you're structuring your network or your program. One thing that I always like to do is think about incentivizing our champions, and that can be big or small, right? So it could be gift cards, it could be internal swag. So just think about the rewards that we want to, the recognition and rewards that we want to share with our champions. But as we're setting them up for success, we want to make sure that they understand the need for this change. They know how they should be communicating about the change, engaging and supporting, how we can engage and support them, that they act as a role model, that there's an expectation for them to monitor some of the activity that's going on in our centralized location, and just how they can continue to make people feel better about the change. All right, and lastly, and probably most importantly, the pillar about measuring success. So defining goals and metrics, we want to focus on number of users. Sorry, my slides are going crazy here. How many users do we have enabled with Copilot? How often are they using the tool? What time saved can we measure from them? And what's the quality of the output that they're seeing from Copilot? And what does that user satisfaction look like? So these are some of the key success metrics that we want to take a look at to help us assess, okay, what impact is Copilot really having at our organization here? So, are people really using it? Are they using it in the same place over and over again? And what does that mean? Are they only using it in Teams because they only know how? Do they know that it's available in other applications? Do they know how they can use it in other applications? So as we're taking note of some of these key insights and metrics, it gives us an opportunity to adjust our strategy and just provide more awareness and education where there might be an opportunity. And I talked about some of the ways that we can measure success of a rollout program, again, whether it's a pilot, whether it's an organization-wide rollout. We want to make sure that we can collect sentiment analysis. So leaning on things like surveys, focus groups, and even one-on-one or small group interviews to help shape that growing trust and level of comfort with the tool. Looking at the dashboard, again, we know that the dashboard has key insights where we can get some entry-level numbers as to what's going on with Copilot, how people are using it, and where they're really seeing the value. And something that we always like to do when we can is A/B user testing. So really mapping one for one how much time or how much mental effort it takes to complete a task without Copilot compared to with Copilot. So we can really start to dive deeper into some of the benefits and productivity savings there. So for anyone who's thinking about creating a rollout plan, we want to make sure that we look at these key criteria when you're putting your strategy together. So manage the perception of Copilot and AI in the workforce, identifying those key processes where Copilot can really be plugged in and we can see some quick wins. Empowering users to effectively use Copilot, making sure that they have that foundational knowledge of prompt engineering. We always like to say the power is in the prompting, and the more you put into a prompt, the more you'll get out of it, right? So making sure that we know what makes a strong prompt and how we can speak to Copilot in a way where we see the best results. Engaging champions to help us drive that change forward, comprehensively and regularly measuring the impact and ROI. And then with all of that, of course, building the business case, right? To really understand what the usage and adoption looks like and the impact that it is having across the broader organization. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to my lovely colleague, Alex, to talk about extending Copilot with custom agents. Alex, you're still on mute there.
Of course I am. Thank you, Jesse. So far, we covered very important topics related to securing Copilot governance. Thanks, Naeem, for taking us through those important topics. Jesse just walk us through how successfully adopt Copilot within organization, what rules we need to follow to make it success when Copilot rolls out within organization. So I'm going to be talking about extensibility. So we know that out of the box, Copilot can reason around information stored in an index in Microsoft Cloud. And very familiar application like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, SharePoint, OneDrive. We have interaction within those applications using Copilot. In general, M365 Copilot, it's a tool that helps users with personal productivity around M365 application. And it brings a lot of value and helps users to be efficient. However, users want to do more. They want to enhance Copilot behavior. They also want to reach data that lives maybe outside of Microsoft Cloud. They want to get the data that resides either in the on-prem systems and solutions or in another cloud applications. So if we want to connect Copilot to CRM data or data that sits in ERP system, or maybe some other knowledge sources. And most important, we want to leverage AI, natural language, while we interacting with those systems and data sources. So Copilot extensibility help us to address those needs that user express. So here we have kind of a definition of Copilot extensibility. It's very simple diagram, but in broad terms, extensibility is methods that are available to empower and enhance out-of-the-box functionality of Copilot through different methods, through different abilities that we call skills and additional knowledge. And the tool or the what extensibility presents itself, it's a Copilot agents, and we will be discussing how agents can enhance end user experience who are already familiar with Copilot. So in general, agent extends and enhance M365 Copilot by enabling new skills, action, and bring extended knowledge for grounding. So we extend in knowledge beyond just what sits in Microsoft Cloud, but also we enable additional skill and actions that users can perform on that particular data. We will be talking about different type of agent, different flavor of agents. So we're gonna start like kind of ground ourselves on two main type of agents. So we have declarative agents and custom agents. So declarative agents are kind of custom copilots that tailor to specific business needs. They can be integrated with additional actions. It could be API, it could be message extension, it could be action within Copilot Studio. So we bring more interactive functionality into the Copilot. But also it builds, again, on everything that M365 Copilot gives us. The custom agent gives us even more flexibility. They're enterprise conversational agent built on different foundational models. And we will talk about models a little bit later. But what's important that we can go beyond what models represent in M365 Copilot. Today, Microsoft 365 Copilot exposes several versions of GPT model. Plus, just recently, Microsoft announced a cloud model from Anthropic. There are another choices. With custom agents, you can go beyond what we see in M365 Copilot because we have selection of multiple models through Azure AI Foundry. And those Copilot custom agents that we can build offer greater flexibility and independence. And they allow more highly specialized solution tailored to unique organizational requirements. So we kind of talk about those two different flavors, declarative and custom agents. So how we can build those agents? So we know that when we need solution within M365 ecosystem, then we'll consider declarative agent. Ideal scenario, when you have specific instructions, you know what APIs you will be using. You want your agent to perform like specific self-service action for example, for IT or HR. So there are different business case scenarios that you can address with those declarative engine. So its basic goal to enhance the productivity of end users with a specific task. But there is an option to opt out of custom, opt out and do the custom agents. So this is where you need more flexibility. You need highly specialized AI solution. Those agents, custom agents, they built with different technology, and we'll be talking what tools we have in our tool set in order to build agents. But in general, custom agents, they have a higher level of complexity and higher level of skills that you need in order to build them. Different tool set. So with a declarative agents, we can use Teams toolkit, we can use low-code solution like Copilot Studio, both experience light and full. If people not familiar with Copilot Studio Lite, it's basically agent builder. Microsoft recently went through the renaming, so now agent builder has a new name, Copilot Studio Lite Experience, and there is a Copilot Studio Full Experience that allow Power Platform developers to build solution. When we talk about custom agents, we're gonna talk about Azure AI Foundry, Teams AI Library. So it's a more pro development path. And as I mentioned, we need higher skill set in order to build those custom agents, but they still within reach of your development team because tooling is there and it's constantly evolves and it helps our developers to build those agents. So what values we can bring with custom, with extensibility, specifically with knowledge? So the number one question that user ask us when they already adopt Copilot, how can I reach data that sits outside of my SharePoint, outside of my drive, OneDrive? How we can get data that's stored on ServiceNow in a Workday? So the quick answer is usage of connectors. So connectors allow us to access enterprise knowledge sources built by third parties. There is entire store of connectors that publish an M365 store, and they pretty much plug and play items. So you can just select the connector, and that connector will have interactivity with your M365 tenant. It will ingest data through Microsoft Graph into your tenant, and that data becomes available for your users, not only use through Copilot, which is great, but also you can use the same data, browse data through Microsoft Search, Context IQ, and within Microsoft 365 apps. So it's very easy way to get to the third-party data sources, and you don't need to do a lot of development. You can obviously build custom connectors to custom data sources, but like I said, first we encourage to look at what's available out of the box, already built by Microsoft and their partners. But also important things about those connectors, their data is protected. So the same principles that Naeem described about security, compliance policies, visibility, discoverability, you get with those connectors that are available to extend knowledge for Microsoft 365 Copilot and your custom agent. So let's talk the value of actions. The old name of action, it's plugins, and sometimes we use kind of interchange those terms. But in general, actions allow us to not only connect to third-party data sources, but also perform actions on those data sources. We can retrieve data in real time. We can update data. We can consider plugins using custom APIs to create seamless interaction between different application and your agent. So that will have a very big impact on your end users, because they not only just in chatbot interface with Copilot, interaction with Copilot, just getting answers from Copilot. They can also ask Copilot to perform actions by creating records in a database, by sending notification through the maybe Exchange, Outlook, or other third-party applications. So if we take a look at the tool set or tooling that Microsoft built for us in order to extend Copilot, first of all, no code, those connectors. Like I said, it takes a little bit of effort for administrators to connect M365 tenant to third-party data source, and right away you enhance your end user experience with Copilot because you have access to those third-party data sources. Then we move to middle level of complexity of extensibility, low code. So Copilot Studio is a basically agent building tool that Microsoft developed specifically for extending Copilot and building agents. And people who work a lot with Power Platform, they will be very comfortable working with Copilot Studio, because Copilot Studio built on Power Platform foundation, and a lot of terminology, a lot of components of Copilot Studio, they very tightly integrated with Power Platform. And then if we move even further to the right, we have Pro Code, Pro Development choice of tools. This is where we can leverage Azure AI Foundry. Like I said, there are hundreds of different models that's available in Azure AI Foundry that help us to build those very customized solution for different functionality in agents. So few minutes about agents. So they are common, as I mentioned, different types, but as far as their functionality, what they bring to end users. So we have very simple retrieval engine, just pretty much a chatbot. We're very familiar with that. Then we have test-centric agents. This is different type of agents. Those agents tightly connected to specific workflows or processes. They operate based on knowledge, skills, and rules, and they basically help with automation. Their primary purpose is automate repetitive tasks. And then we have more advanced level of agents, autonomous agents. Those agents operate independently, dynamically planning and learning from the processes. They adapt to changing condition and make decisions without constant interaction of end users. So end users is notified and it's he's or she's in the loop, but actually agent perform a lot of the task by itself. And with the different business processes, we can find and kind of match what agent we need for what business process, but pretty much they can revolutionize how we address our processes within an organization. One of the examples of such agent is the employee self-serve agent that allows to bring together data from HR and IT and other different service providers like Workday, ServiceNow. So we extend knowledge, we allow end users to answer questions about data stored outside of M365 Cloud, but also within cloud, and it's out of the box, easily to configure. If you have interest in actually using this agent, Valorem Reply is doing a lot of work with implementation of that agent, and we can always help you. And with that, I'm gonna pass this back to Andrew to get us through the steps how to get started.
You're on mute.
You're on
Andrew.
mute, Andrew.
Hope you guys enjoyed this great content over this last hour. One last couple informational slide is Valorem Reply has many ways of engaging no matter where you're at in your Copilot journey, whether it's, hey, I want to understand the art of the possible, or all the way to full rollout and adoption, where Jesse went over how we do adoption change management, and Naeem with security, and Alex with agents and extending Copilot. Wherever you're at, if you reach out to Valorem Reply, we will map you, understand, build a strategic roadmap for getting you started or extending from wherever you're at. And that goes with security too. If security is a big thing that your company is having trepidations about getting started with Copilot, we have a way of isolating people on depending on where they need protection, how they need protection, and overall, what is a baseline standard for a company, and how do we identify what that protection needs to be. Security, Copilot's great for usage, but without security, it's a very dangerous and potentially area where it'll cause issues if you don't discuss security up ahead. So with that, if you have any Q&A, please submit it in the Q&A tab above. Otherwise, thank you again for joining us for the Telco Media and Gaming webinar. If you're interested in more events like this, you can scan the QR code to find our various list of videos and webinars that we put on more around this area. Thank you.